MandaloreGaming, everybody, welcome to solo ReacTalk. Tonight I'm going to be reacting to a video requested by Alpha Shocker. It's called Myth the Fallen Lords review, made on the MandaloreGaming YouTube channel. If you guys want to check out my previous reactions to other MandaloreGaming game review videos, remember the playlist card is going to be at the top here. Just click on it and be able to access them. If you want to check out the original video as well as MandaloreGaming's YouTube channel, the links are going to be in the description below. Okay, let's start. 3, 2, 1, go.
As a genre, RTS games have been pulled in all kinds of directions over the years. Some would mash up with city builders or action games, or kind of blur the line between itself and a tactics game. Sure, some refined the build a base and beat up your enemies formula, but getting there required some bold experiments. And this is what takes us slightly past the birth of Dune 2 and Command & Conquer to Myth. Now don't get me wrong, it's not the first ever real-time tactics game or anything like that. There were already a good chunk of others, and some got very detailed in unit management. What are their traits, what kind of socks do they wear, you know the drill. Myth is interesting because while it has small elements of that, the idea the developers had was to go make a big war game. An RTS without the resources or the base building, all fighting. And this
I like the resource collecting and, building citadels of power, and then you begin your invasion or defense against opponents. I don't necessarily just like being popped into the game and then you're fighting. I want to have control over the means of production and creating the army that I'll be sending off to fight against the enemy opponent. So I don't really like it that, probably the game is dictating how many people or units I'll have on the battlefield and the types of units I'll be having on the battlefield, and, that's all I have to use on the battlefield. I can't make any decision about what do I want, how do I want them, when do I want them, how many of them do I want. So yeah, I'm not really fond of not having that type of control.
This is violence that had some scale, both on its maps and its story, which is delivered in a unique way in a tone all its own. It currently comes with a third story, the tale of getting it to fucking play, so I'll regale you with that a bit. Myth is currently in the realm of abandonware, and while it's easy enough to find, getting it to run is tricky if you're not going to use a virtual machine. Luckily, there's Project Magma. This is a fan patch that adds OpenGL rendering, fixes some things, and makes the game's map editor much more accessible. The issue is, it's still finicky, especially when I'm trying to record the game. And while adding OpenGL and proper widescreen support is great, it gives the maps and shadows some dithering issues to where it can look worse than the actual game.
Better you than me, MandaloreGaming. I would have given up. I'm not a very patient person. I want this game to play as soon as I get it. I don't want any issues. So if there's a step-by-step process that's required for me to play this game, I'm sorry. Better you than me. Thank you. Thank you for your hard work.
It's not Crisis or anything, so it's not hugely noticeable and can be fixed with a wrapper, but I was still having crashing and instability issues all over the place. So what most people recommend is Project Magma, for Myth 2. In the early 2000s, dedicated fans recreated all of the Myth Fallen Lords levels inside of Myth 2 SPOI𝘓ERS. The sequel only came out a year after the first game, so it's not a huge engine overhaul, but there are definitely noticeable differences. So, you install the Fallen levels for Myth 2 and then enable that plugin, go through the menus and turn on every The Fallen Lords option you see to make it more like the first game, play the Myth 1 or 2 tutorial and make the controls more comfortable instead of this.
Yes, that's orbiting.
Fix all that, realize the briefings are playing but not the animated cutscenes, which you can download as QuickTime files that Magma will play, except they're cutscenes that someone tried to remaster the interlacing out of back then, and now they're brightened to hell and lack detail and outlines. You do all of this, and the effects still aren't 100% accurate, and you could download a mod to try and get the old interface, and now the video's a cry for help. Fans have given the game a ton of love and support over the years, including fan campaigns, but just playing the game is in a Frankenstein's monster territory right now. Deciding how to play it is like going through a labyrinth. The most recommended path is fan pixel-by-pixel recreations of the first game inside the second game, with multiple options to emulate the first game, but still not perfectly. Flavor text can be inaccurate, how things can work aren't exactly the same. The authenticity versus access fight can be so strong here. There are options everywhere, so the version in this video is the one that currently most people are likely to play. It's not ideal, but now you know why things are this way.
Whew. Yeah.
With that fun disclaimer done, here's how the story of Myth gets going. Like many games from this time, most of our backstory is in the manual. It's written from the perspective of a soldier in the Legion, and the entire game is framed this way. A lot of the information is fragmented or has ambiguous accuracy. Major events happen that you don't participate in during the game. The soldier here is writing about his 7th year of war in the north. For the past 50 years, the planet has been ravaged by an evil force called the Dark.
Wow. They really made this continent quite unique. It's not just a piece of land. You know, we're seeing mountains, hills, grasslands. Madrigal, Tyre, Covenant, Scales, the province. Okay. Alright, no, it's nice. The Great DeVoid. Interesting name.
Which seems to happen a lot in these fantasy settings, but this time around, the Dark are a swarm of undead. They're led by a cryptic figure called Balor and his commanders, the Fallen Lords. The Fallen
It sounds like Game of Thrones, the Night King and his generals and his undead army. Yeah.
Lords were powerful spellcasters from the history of the world that Balor brought back to lead his armies. And they've been winning. A lot of the East was turned into a desert wasteland from their conquest. Several fantasy races have been wiped out, or at least lost their homeland. Even on its best day, Balor's march from the East has only been slowed down. The soldier does have some hope to reflect on because this still isn't the worst thing that happened to the world. 1,000 years ago, the world was nearly destroyed by a race called the Mircridia, which are only said to be a race of flesh-eaters too horrible to describe. Then, at the same time a mysterious comet appeared in the skies, so did the hero Connaught rise out from the east. He was not only the first human to survive them, but to beat them, imprisoning them in an artifact called the Tane. After that, Connaught rose up to be emperor and ruled over the Age of Light. Then he died of natural causes or was assassinated. It's kind of lost to time. But before he passed, he sought out powerful artifacts, destroying those he could and hiding away the ones he couldn't. Presumably to stop more apocalypse events, but now Balor is running wild. The stronghold of Madrigal is the last free city from the Dark. It and the Forces of Light are led by powerful spellcasters called the Nine. The soldier hears a rumor that the Nine have found something that can turn the tide of the war. Maybe an artifact that Connaught hid away. Which you see in the opening cutscene. Which is a strange art style for the material. It's sitting right between a Disney Renaissance look and a Saturday morning cartoon. I don't know, I guess I wasn't expecting a Scooby-Doo lick from the Forces of Darkness.
Yeah, it really does look like something I would have watched when I was younger. You know, on Disney Channel, or on Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network. Yeah, it's got that feel to it.
It's not like Bible story animation bad, but it's weird. Anyhow, here's what can win the war.
Okay. Alright, and it's alive. The head is opening its eyes. That's... Oh.
Once again, Head will save the day. You campaign around what's left of the Boned World and try to stop Balor and the Fallen Lords. Which does look fairly simple gameplay-wise, but boy can this game be a lot.
Casualty.
Let's start.
I don't hear any music. I just hear casualty. This is not good. If there's no music here, guys, I'm not going to enjoy it. Definitely.
Start with the graphics. For a strategy game of its time, it's pretty impressive looking. With a giant asterisk of for a 3D game. It doesn't quite hit that level of timeless 2D sprite work that was really hitting its stride in the early 2000s. But even though it looks comparatively barren nowadays, there's still a lot I find visually appealing about it. Granted, some effects are additions from the Myth 2 engine like water reflections, but most of what's great was there from the beginning. The art direction for the units is great and they really pop against the landscape. Even as things get busy when you duke it out with the undead, things stay readable.
I like the knights, you know, full battle armor with the shield and the sword, and they look purple in color, you know. I think they're supposed to be kind of like a grayish silver type, but it's like it's purple color. So yeah, it makes them pop out, makes them stand out from other units that are on the field as well. So it's quite nice.
Light units can have eye-catching reflective metal effects on their armor and weapons, and the dark units will show up with really unique silhouettes and striking colors. I mean, how Myth uses its color palette all around is excellent. Units can have slight variety to them for flavor, but never enough to throw you off. Design-wise, most of the light units especially aren't very creative. They'd easily lose their identity in a lineup of fantasy creatures and warriors. However, their brightly colored designs and good animation work do make them fun to watch, especially when the battles really get going.
The problem I see here is the units, the way they move. It seems like it's very slow. Hopefully there is like a fast forward capability, like to speed up the game speed. Because yeah, it just seems to me like the units are moving very, very slowly. And yeah, I'm gonna fall asleep.
It showcases a decent amount of physics in it. On a gameplay side, you have to worry about physical objects like trees and buildings blocking your archer's arrows, and elevation is taken into account for accuracy or your own bombs rolling back at you. Even weather, beyond being a cool detail to add some more atmosphere into the game, has its effects. Molotov cocktails already get dunked out in water, so if it's raining, it's not guaranteed, but there's a high chance.
I thought that was magic. but it's only a Molotov cocktail, bottle being thrown at the enemy. That's interesting too. That's unique. I don't think I've actually seen that in any RTS Middle Ages themed kind of games, or even like, for instance, Age of Mythology, Age of Empires, Age of Mythology. I've never seen something like this before, where people are throwing Molotov cocktails at the enemy. So that's unique.
Even here you can see the bottles physically bouncing off the Bone Patrol. What's especially noteworthy is how gory this game can get. Magic can explode a thrall into red mist, or a giant can slap an ass back into the Ptolemaic dynasty. I appreciate how destructive these simple fights can be. The battlefields themselves can be absolutely wrecked from the carnage. Obviously, it's cool for battles to leave a giant trail of blood and debris in their wake, but it makes the combat way more satisfying and adds so much spectacle. It's a fairly simple and charming looking game without it, but with it, that adds some staying power. The actual 3D elements on the maps are very simple most of the time, but it gave it scale and they used clever techniques like painting the shadows in the ground surfaces. It's still all in service of the fights and making the big war game look appealing. Every so often you'll see some unique bits in the landscape or details that help drive the story, but that stuff is still mainly confined to the briefings. There are still times where a map will show deeper parts of the lore, or add more to a mystery. It's serviceable nowadays, it's fine. You can see it. As for the sound design, Myth is in a weird place. Based off looking at it, the game mostly sounds exactly how you think it would. Mostly stock sounds, guys in the office doing all the voice acting. The standouts are usually when someone explodes because there's a surprising amount of debris noise accounted for.
Yeah.
What definitely sticks out is there's no music. Missions could have a lot of ambient sound, but that's all you're getting.
Maybe they're trying to make it as realistic as possible, In the real world, you're not going to have, an overlay of music as you're marching off to battle. So yeah, maybe they're just trying to make it as realistic as possible. But it's a very important thing for me to have music in an RTS game, I can remember Populous, the beginning. I don't know if you guys have played that game before, Populous, the beginning. It had some beautiful soundtracks. I'll just be lost in that game, enjoying the game, building my armies, making my shaman stronger, and then we would march off to battle, and then you'd hear the music. Aye, aye, ooh. Really, they had such beautiful music that just transported you into the game, and just, you just felt like you're a part of it, and you just enjoyed playing and building your civilization. So that's what I really loved about Populous and the gameplay. It was mainly the soundtracks, the music that came from that game. Truly, truly enjoyable. So it's always good to have music in an RTS game. But yeah, maybe with Myth, the Fallen Lords, they don't need music. Maybe it was a decision made by the game developers that, we don't want to put music in here. We want to make it as realistic as possible. But, in my point of view, you gotta have music. You have to have music. Yeah.
Huh. It's not just the sounds of battle, you do have your voice acting, which are mainly your guys trying not to friendly fire each other.
Stand clear. Step aside. Yes, sir.
Stand clear. Step aside.
Clear. Hey, step aside. Hey. Sorry.
These are more extreme
They even say sorry to each other. Oh, that's so cute.
examples. When you learn to place your guys properly, it doesn't happen as often, and it was never grating. There are more experienced voice actors in the game too, so hearing the two camps interacting can be pretty fun.
Have you seen the mayor of Otter Ferry?
Sure. I passed him near the stone monument.
He is a traitor to his town. Will you lead us to him?
A traitor? Then let's move before he gets away. Sir, there are too many of them. We must retreat.
No, no retreating. We must hold our ground.
We're going to the shrine to pray for help.
Then you waste your time. The gods aren't listening.
It's your standard, kind of lower 90s RTS Gouda. At this point, you may be wondering where the hell that tone I mentioned earlier was coming from. Well, Myth has some phenomenal music and great voice acting, and it's all in the mission briefs.
Tuesday, May 19th, the edge of Forest Heart. It's spring again, and after 5 months of rest, the Legion is once more on the move.
I like the music. I actually do like the music. It reminds me of like 90s romcom or drama type of movies or TV series. Even like Japanese games, for instance, like Naruto Shippuden. Which one was it? Ninja Storm 3 or 4? I can't remember. But yeah, the menu, they would play music something similar to this, with the piano, the slow piano, and this kind of like somber ambiance kind of feel to it. Yeah, I like this. I like this type of music. And I like the map that they're showing here. This is different. Really, this is different. It kind of reminds me of those History Channel documentaries I used to watch when I was very young. How they would show the battlefield, and then they'd show the arrows of, how your forces are going to enter into this particular battlefield, and then the opposing force would come with a different colored arrow, and they would meet up, at a particular point on the map. So yeah, really, it's unique, it's different, and the music as well. Very good. I like it.
Last week we passed through 7 gates into the eastern lands over the cloud spine. The Fallen seem to have abandoned the mountains, but for what reason we cannot tell. The only good news is that Ulrich is still alive and will join us tomorrow. This far east, the dwarfs with us are closer to their occupied homelands than any of their race has been in 50 years. Not expecting to return, many of them have decided to give up their lives rather than abandon their country once again to the Goals who have overrun it.
They really should have added that into the gameplay, the music. It's good.
Mine.
The briefings and writing are so good that it tremendously elevates the game, though the gap can feel so massive that it's surreal. It's like watching Thomas and the Magic Railroad and there are trains fucking around and Alec Baldwin is on something. And then what the hell are these Peter Fonda scenes?
But I didn't guard you well. I just don't seem to understand about...
I'll get him too, with Pinchy. Wow, Pinchy!
He chased her.
I believe I should know this character, the trains with the faces. I've seen it before, but I just can't put my finger on it. Yeah,
He used up all her coal. He made her go too fast. And then he crashed her.
Good God. And yeah, this effect wouldn't have been nearly as jarring back then. Between the gore, the mood of some levels, and just how the missions are structured, they were doing their best with what they had and having fun with it. Time does march on though. The contrasts can be awkward now, but they did a lot then to make it work that I can appreciate. Plus, the effect is because the briefings are just that good. The music sets the tone perfectly, the narration adds so much weight to the writing. You'll sometimes get some sketch drawings of what's happening. As an example, you never see the horrible flesh-eating Mercuridia race, but at one point your forces get trapped inside of the Tane and you see some of their handiwork.
Oh my gosh, are those all severed heads? Whew. And they made a mountain of it. Damn.
Date unknown, inside the Tane. Tradition tells us almost nothing of the Mercuridia, save for the horrible skull platforms they would build from the severed heads of their enemies. We found one of these a few hours ago, 30 feet high and 100 feet across, each skull arranged with a mad precision that was terrifying to behold. Many of the skulls were human, or at least humanoid, but among these were others which were certainly not, whose shapes and curves I have tried to forget ever since. In the center of the platform, far above our heads, rose the ancient battle standard of the Mercuridia. We left immediately.
It is so excellent. They stay mysterious and Lovecraftian, but you're given more insight into what they were like. They weren't just feral monsters, they had some kind of vicious intelligence to a degree that you can't be entirely sure of. Myth is full of stuff like that, so let's talk about the gameplay. With only your units to worry about, things do seem simple to pick up. You get in the fight and don't have to worry about much paperwork. Some units do have a single ability, like dwarves have satchel charges they could detonate. Your walking high pile rugs that are journeymen can heal themselves and other units, but it never gets more complicated than that on the power side. The main skill is properly positioning your troops, and the game comes with a formation system. Since physics are a factor, you can't just stick your archers behind your melee dudes. You need to take elevation and spacing into account if you want them shooting from the backline. And yeah, it's a brain-dead simple system. If you're remotely familiar with these games, you get how this works. Keep your guys tight for melee brawls, spread them out if there's range or AoE danger. There's even a dedicated scatter command to make that easier. However, don't confuse simple to play with simple to win. Myth's missions can be shockingly difficult, because you're expected to use every tool and trick at your disposal. To top it off, this game can put you at the mercy of RNGesus. From the very first mission, you'll notice that the archers shoot like they have oven mitts for hands. And the same goes for the dwarves, who are much more stressful since they're throwing explosives. All these shots will have some variation, and sometimes variation means a dwarf whiffing his throw way too close and obliterating your own forces.
Oh, friendly fire, oh my gosh.
The good news is that units can become more accurate and efficient, it's just they have to rack up some kills first. Once a unit has some kills racked up, life becomes better, but it can be a hard road to get there. Some people could probably play this and go, oh, it makes combat unpredictable and exciting, but no, I mostly find this frustrating as hell. To make it worse, they toned down this aspect big time in Myth 2, and one of the TFL options is to keep the old accuracy. The issue is the campaign was designed around it, and you don't get the effect in some sections if you change it. The frustration wasn't bad enough that I wanted to skip it entirely, but I could not believe some of the whiffs I saw. Especially early on, like in the Hunt the Zombies mission. The last city is being sieged by the Dark, but you're not there to help them, you're here to draw some troops away from that battle. You have some troops to hunt down zombies that violently explode.
Suicide zombies?
What the hell was that?
It is a slow-going process, and I'd guess most players find out about the speed-up hotkey around here. It's not unusual for games like this to have that, but it is unusual for me to want to use it this often.
Thank the creators of the game for putting it on, because I was complaining about it in the beginning, saying that the units are moving too slow for my liking. So if there is a speed-up option, for the game speed, then please use it.
It's not the kind of thing that's smart to use in a battle or set to too high of a speed, but the maps can be so long with the travel times, or you're waiting on your archers to get hits. I did something I don't do often and looked at Let's Plays for this game, and every single one used the speed up command too. You might think you're not that person, but Myth will make you that person.
Oh, I am that person. I am definitely that person.
Looping back to the accuracy aspect, that's not the main source of the difficulty. The whole losing the war thing isn't just flavor, you feel it in the missions. The Fallen Lords are relentless. You've got 5 difficulties to choose from, ranging from timid to legendary.
Timid and simple. Interesting. I don't think I've actually seen that in a difficulty level option, you know? Timid? Wow.
This will buff the enemy unit stats and decrease yours, and also increase the number of enemies. And more advanced unit types can show up. Normal can still give you a run for your money, but Legendary is a different beast entirely. The difficulty is appropriate for the story, so I'm going to talk about the two hand in hand from here on out.
That's a dead dummy.
Like I said, you're not at the siege of the last city, instead hunting zombies, and you will never fight at or see the last city. You won't see many major events, but we'll hear the soldier learn about them. The George Romero laser tag was a ploy to remove some of the dark from the attack on the city. It does work, but the attackers were led by one of the fallen lords, Shiver. The Fallen are so horrifying and powerful that none have been defeated in combat. Well, the moment you learn who Shiver is, you learn she was killed by one of the 9. She was killed in something called a dream duel, which is never elaborated on. I guess that's not entirely true. Right before the second game came out, a comic was released called Tales from Myth. It has 4 short stories from the setting by different artists, and one includes the dream duel. Finally, no more imagining it, let's see.
Vanity. Okay?
Never mind. It only says the secret to her defeat was her vanity. In the previous mission, you did have to hunt down a traitorous mayor who was betraying all of mankind to the dark. This is obviously stupid, so it implies that Shiver had some kind of power over him.
Yes, that's orbiting.
The secret was revealed by the Head, who claims to be an ancient enemy of Shiver and all the others. He wants the 9 and the Forces of Light to get the Total Codex. It's some kind of artifact that is hidden away in the ruined city of Covenant. For that mission, only your single journeyman can pick up the Codex, so if he dies, it's mission over. The journeymen are neat. They're basically the remains of the Praetorian Guard that served in Connaught's empire. Since that was burned down 50 years ago, they now wander the earth and fight with a shovel. They have long lives, and some have gone crazy. In the manual prologue, one shows up who is just a flat earther. He says the earth is like a double-sided coin flipping through the air, shifting between ages of dark and light. The centrifugal force is sorcery beyond our comprehension, holding the souls of both living and dead to its surface. This is a badass thing to say to a stranger, but I have heard a similar story from a tweaker in Chicago. The fight for the Codex was already underway when you get there, and it's lying right there in the grass. Mission accomplished. After you escape. Another great detail is that the missions have unique end screen art, both for winning and for losing, which isn't something you see often compared to a mission failed screen. It's almost like they knew you were going to be own-zoned. Anyways, the value of the Codex is immediately clear since it has information on things that haven't happened yet. Like one day, a man will resurrect the mere Critia. The soldier closes the book. The fallen lord he wrestled it from is called the Watcher, and he was a supremely powerful necromancer even in life. He was imprisoned in the Cloudspine Mountain in the time of Connaught, and even when Balor resurrected him, his arm was left behind. From here you're trying to escape his army, and a wrong direction can mean an easy wipe. The proper war takes focus for a while here, trying to outrun the Watcher and make it to a mountain to relink with your forces to stop another fallen lord, the Deceiver, from crossing over. You're helped by Northern Berserkers, but the Dark's forces are becoming more dangerous too. Beyond
Northern Berserkers?
raw stats, they have innate abilities that you need to be careful of. Thralls can ambush you from underwater, the Soulless can cross any terrain, and Ghouls can pick up weapons, limbs, bombs, or anything else to chuck back at you. The unique units combined with the physicality of the maps do make you approach the situations differently, so while there is slow downtime, the battles are engaging. From here you meet the Trow, who are not undead, but are part of the Dark. They were the dominant race of the planet until mistakes were made and Balor bound them to his will.
They look like orcs or trolls. Yeah.
These are the roided stat units.
Like if there were satchel charges hidden among the debris.
That was scary. That was actually scary.
Try to avoid the Trow. Capturing the mountain isn't a pure victory. The Head has declared that Ulrich, one of the 9 leading the other forces, has been captured and his army decimated. You'll need to rescue him over a series of 2 missions with a squad of hero units. You could think it'd be something like a Command and Conquer hero mission where you're there to sneak around but feel powerful. No. This mission is maybe the most representative of the game. You need to play as tactically and carefully as possible, using all the abilities your units have. No one is allowed to die, and even on normal, you'll be facing down triple-digit enemies. These are not superheroes, they're marginally better than your regulars. You have to use positioning to your advantage, try to fight the enemy in choke points, use traps. This is the essence of the game boiled down to what might feel like cheesing in another game is what you're expected to do here.
No, this is good. This is actually quite good. You know, using the environment to your advantage, using traps, using misdirection. You have to be strategic in your movements. You have to think 3 steps ahead of the opponents, and that's all what it's about when you're playing a RTS type of game. So yes, I think this is good. I think that what they've added here is a benefit to this game, and like I said before, that's what it's all about when you're playing a real-time strategic type of game. You always need to survey the land. You need to make sure that you're capable of using it to your advantage. Whatever choke points are available, whether you have the high ground or whether you're near the ocean or the sea, and how you're going to use that to your advantage with your units. And yeah, I think it's good.
You can easily make a mistake and lose, but you can save any time, and the story is compelling enough to keep going. The act of getting new soldiers also gives you new little quotes about the setting. They're fragmented like the journal, but sound more interesting and start to come together the more you play the game. Though in more engine fun, sometimes you get a Myth 2 quote by mistake. Again, Frankenstein. You'll get a rarely used unit like Forest Giants, click on one and read, "When asked of the source of their animosity towards the Trow, all were silent. After a time, the eldest among them looked down and seemed to weep. It was they who poisoned the soul of iron." Yeah, I'll keep playing to read stuff like that and watch the giants pulverize their enemies. It keeps the right aspects vague or implies connections, but is still straightforward enough to tell a good story. If it was all cryptic or nonsense, I wouldn't feel invested. You do free Ulrich from the ethereal Vitamix, and the Dark continue to pursue you. The 9 were wondering how Ulrich was captured in the first place, and why the Head sent him over the mountain. After Ulrich gets more lucid from his post-torture period, he says the Head sent him over to find an invincible suit of armor. He also says that he thinks the Head is full of shit. It claims to have been a great friend and advisor to Connaught, but also claims that it lost its body fighting Balor, a difference of at least 1,000 years. The alibi.
So it's playing both camps? It's playing in both camps. Okay.
Alibis are not adding up. And waiting in the desert is one of the Deceiver's lieutenants, a Shade.
Ah, Sinis. I thought you died when Mazarin collapsed the Shrine of Nyx upon you.
Indeed, Ulrich. Then I'll wager that you thought you'd see the last of me.
I have seen the last of you.
Absolutely killer line. This is why you keep going. You also get to see firsthand the power of dream magic.
Yeah, man, this magic is crazy. I mean, everyone's just popping like balloons.
The Legion is then sent out to look for the Watcher's arm. The narrator is not sure why the 9 want this or why they even know where it is, but you can guess. A complication is that the Deceiver has already been looking for the arm. The Fallen Lords are bound to help Balor, but not each other, and some of their rivalries are ancient. If only he had a talking head and magic book to geolocate that thing. But even they couldn't predict a volcanic eruption. One of the 9 is killed by an ambush from the Watcher, and the eruption has melted the snow on the mountains, letting the Deceiver move through. The Legion now has to hold off against the Deceiver's undead and the troops that he's turned to the dark. You're now cut off from the west, and the victory screen isn't too triumphant. Then comes a huge relief when the narrator gets news that the Deceiver and the Watcher are now fighting. With the distraction, your forces can sneak through the carnage and escape. Like the hero mission, you might think it's a fun third-party battle where you get to mulch both sides. Absolutely not.
Especially because you have limited forces. What you get from this from the game is what you get. That's it. And if you lose your forces trying to battle 2 other opponents, you're going to lose the game. So what you have to keep it alive. You have to make sure that you don't get caught smack down in between these 2 forces fighting each other. You have to try and avoid them as much as possible to get to the other side. Yeah.
You are trying to avoid columns of enemy forces that are on the way to eviscerate each other. The more you can stay out of the fight to get to the escape point, the better.
Exactly.
Even when the enemy is infighting, the numbers are so overwhelming that it doesn't matter for you. The campaign has you on the back foot, on the run, and only able to put up a stand-up fight in very particular circumstances. The apocalyptic tone is carried over to the gameplay where you do actually feel it. It's a difficult game, but as the campaign goes on, it feels more and more earned. They're not pumping up numbers just to inflate your time playing, it is for the tone. By the way, escape point means killing another Shade with no Ulrich to help you. All the victory cheers are very appropriate. After
I like how they're clanking their swords and shields together like that. At first I was wondering what was that sound. But yeah, now you see.
That is where you recruit the giants with the help of 2 of the 9 personally. It almost feels like a joke, like this would be the turning point with the Ents in Lord of the Rings. You're winning, and then a fallen lord named SPOI𝘓ERS personally shows up and teleports your entire army. He's been a busy man and rediscovered the Tane artifact, the interdimensional prison that fits in the palm of your hand. Oh god, aren't there Mercrydia in there? From the looks of things, no. They either died off or the prison's so big they're somewhere else. It is full of spiders and traps, and you do leave troops behind to keep going. You don't have a persistent army, but it's incredible how bad this still feels. One of the 9 figures out to escape the Tane, but it destroys it, along with himself, the other member of the 9, and thousands of men trapped inside still. Truly a taint of a Tane with only your survivors and that Mercrydia battle standard as a prize. Though you spent days trapped, for SPOI𝘓ERS it was only a second or two and the Tane appeared to instantly shatter, and he took off. You get word from the main force and it's dire. What's left of the 9 accused the head of double-crossing them, and not all of the troops agreed. A civil war erupted, and thousands of troops were killed along with some more of the 9, which...
Oh no. That means the capital, or the last city, is also going to be in serious trouble right now. If the forces of the light and the 9 are not united, and having one understanding, one voice, one leadership, they're going to become very weak, and... you know, their opponents are going to smell blood in the water.
The narrator is now wondering if he should call the 3. Ulrich has joined the Legion instead of joining up with the main force. There's a side story here about the dwarves launching a suicidal attack against the ghouls occupying their bombed-out homeland. It starts off with a single sneaky dwarf who can call in reinforcements, but call them in carefully. By exiting the level through a cave, you can access a secret second dwarf mission. The squad is going to take down one of the ghouls' idols, and man, this is a tricky one. It's definitely the king of accuracy frustration missions, but at least it is optional. Since it's a secret mission, it's also framed in a fun way where it's just a rumor that the narrator isn't even sure is true. It's worth it though, because fuck them and their rock. Back on track, Ulrich says the western lands have fallen, the last city will be destroyed, and there is no hope for them. He did learn in captivity that the fallen lords are bound to Balor in such a direct way that if Balor were killed, they'd lose their powers and the undead armies would collapse. While the world burns, the Legion will set out to assassinate Balor and give life a chance. You collect an ancient bow, and this is where the purpose of the Watcher's arm is revealed. The bone in his arm has been whittled down into arrows. A secondary force did nail him with them, which turned him back to stone. But the force was wiped out before they could deliver the killing blow and shatter him. Which means you going in, spending more men and time to properly obliterate the Watcher. You move deeper into the east, and the enemy forces are increasing while yours are dwindling. Balor didn't need to commit all of his soldiers to the western fight, there are still plenty here. The comet has reappeared in the sky, growing brighter, and Ulrich says the last city has been destroyed. The barely over 2,000 soldiers here are all that's left of the light. The lands are running red with blood rivers that the Thrall can still ambush you from. Even with Ulrich on the field and using dream magic, it's still hairy. It feels apocalyptic, and Ulrich has a final reveal. The Mercrydia weren't just horrifying, they were the previous soldiers of the dark. Until Balor imprisoned them.
Ulrich
ultimate betrayals out here.
says Connaught and Balor are 2 different names for the same person. I think 4 months in the desert addled his mind. How could the greatest hero of the Wind Age, the king of Mjolnir during its golden age, become the greatest evil of our time?
It's a great twist that raises a lot of questions, but a lot more falls into place. The head was shifty, but now his story could easily be true. Connaught, or Balor wanting to hide or destroy artifacts, has some possible motivations now. Is the comet a symbol of something, or the cause? Is it the source of some kind of magic, and why is magic related to dreams? There's not much time to ponder it, since Ulrich has a plan to draw out Balor. By raising the Mercrydia battle standard outside his fortress, he thinks this will piss him off enough that he'll personally come out to destroy it. With that will come a chance to strike him. The plan is put into motion, and it works. Balor comes out in his bright white paladin armor. If you have any unit between him and the banner, he will kill it harder than I've seen most things in a game die.
Casualty.
Holy shit,
What the hell?
love video games.
Where did you find that accursed thing, Alric? And what madness made you raise it here?
As a lesson in humility, Balor.
Then I have a lesson for you as well.
Casualties.
Balor is so powerful. He sends waves of minions to whittle you down, but unlike other boss fights where you've chunked their health or they're hiding, This comes across as Balor toying with you and getting revenge for making him see that banner. Even now, the Dark Lord is harrowed seeing anything reminding him of the Mere Critia.
The rest of your legion has been destroyed, Alric. What more can you do with this handful of men?
Ew, why is it raining heads?
Join me or die, Alric. You cannot hope to win this battle.
I do not need to win the battle, Balor. Only to kill you.
Finally, you get Ulrich close enough to immobilize him.
Kill him! Kill him!
Yes!
The Dark Lord is defeated by a swarm of berserkers. I'd say he's pretty dead.
Balor has been killed before, Ulrich told us after we raised the Mercridian standard. And each time it has only made him more powerful. Our best hope is to cut off his head and hurl it into the Great DeVoid.
Oh yeah,
Why don't you just cremate him? But okay, throw it into the Great DeVoid. That's an interesting name though. The Great DeVoid. Huh. Yeah, I like it.
Great DeVoid. You remember the Great DeVoid, right? The manual says it's a bottomless chasm created by the Kaliik, where they destroyed themselves rather than letting the Trow destroy them. This is the only time they're mentioned. So you teleport into rolling green hills and pick a dwarf to carry Balor's head. It's a strangely peaceful area and bloodying it up does feel weird, but when you fight through and finally see the Great DeVoid, it sounds like nothing else in the game.
Oh, it sounds like the spirits in there or something.
Scream Roar, I know I've heard something similar before. For being a big bottomless pit, it sure is noisy down there. That race could have destroyed themselves like the story said, but could there have been something underneath the explosion? Whatever it is, Soulblighter awaits. He might wreck you, but if you get him first, he becomes a murder of crows. The Fallen Lords are a strange bunch. The dwarf yells Kobe, and it's
Bye, Balor.
all over.
Blood-soaked battlefield, but they won. The mission is complete. I like the sunset. You know, the blue skies, or is it like, yeah, like dark blue skies, and then the orange band. I like that. And with the trees also reflecting the light and the darkness, you know, from the mountains that side. Yeah, it's beautiful. I like it.
Stare of grief, our swords got so dull we had to fight with our bare hands. You know how hard it is to strangle the
Whoa. Oh, I guess this is Myth 2 now coming into play.
The Fallen are defeated, and maybe a lot of people just exploded. Man, what a game. Gameplay-wise, I'd say it hasn't aged as well as other strategy games from this period, but it does so much right to stay pretty compelling anyways. The ending does leave a lot of mysteries open, but it's still a satisfying conclusion to the war. The Dark were defeated at the cost of near everything, with less than 30 survivors in the Legion. The evil was defeated, but it's still bittersweet. Myth is such a fascinating game. It is stiff and simple and kind of stitched together nowadays. There's still a somewhat active multiplayer community, but more the kind of thing organized on Discord and mainly using Myth 2. It's good the sequel only came out about a year later because a lot was left unanswered, and some are addressed in the sequel. How is Connaught now Balor? How did he go from destroying the Dark to leading it? Who or what is the head? What is the significance of the comet? Why is Balor utterly destroyed by chucking his head into a big hole that's emanating eldritch noises? Is Bigfoot or the Iowa Stickman down there? Well, it's difficult to say. This isn't the kind of thing I want to lose my mind over, this is still just an overview, but we'll see where the pathways lead us in Myth 2.
Casualty.
It'll be familiar. What video game will I never finish no matter how hard I try? I still have not properly beaten a Borderlands game, and I don't think it's gonna happen. What's a low expectation game that still disappointed me? Thief 4. Are there many games I can't stand? Too many games do have crafting tacked on nowadays, but there's nothing that just melts me. Did I see the Callisto Protocol DLC ending? I played it, and it's like playing the result of a long-running backroom fight. I could not believe what I was seeing, but it feels too short to elaborate on. Thoughts on GURPS? I really like GURPS. It's just, you know how most games have a session for character creation? GURPS can have 3 sessions for character creation. Or I've seen more. It's great when you're playing it, but when you get started and that one guy pulls out all the books, it's all over. Most forgettable video game I somehow remember. Rage? Who would win in a 3-way deathmatch between Briggs, McCoy, or Halligan? McCoy does have a gun, but he's not supposed to shoot people, but he might think Halligan is a replicant. I still want to say Halligan because his camo of dumb and innocence protects him. He also has ordained magic powers now, and who knows what he'll do with that. Briggs might also murder McCoy.
Man, don't take me back to Halligan, okay? Don't take me back there. Please, let's not go back there. Let's not do that. Okay guys, that is it with Myth the Fallen Lords review made on the MandaloreGaming YouTube channel, requested by Alpha Shocker. Alpha Shocker said that this game was going to be a mind-melting game, but it wasn't at all a mind-melting game. It was actually okay. Of course, I would never play the game because of the entire process of making it play on your computer. So yeah, you'll count me out for that. But yeah, the gameplay looked okay. Especially I like how the environment also becomes bloody as your forces are fighting, you know, your opponents. And you know, when they use the Molotov cocktails, throwing them at the enemy, bodies start splattering all over the place, and blood and gore and everything. Yeah, it just made it look very unique, very different. Especially like compared to Age of Empires or Age of Mythology or Populous the Beginning, or any of these other RTS games that I've played before. You know, with this one it was very different, very gory looking, and you know, the music, like I've said before, is very important in RTS types of games, for me. And the fact that this one doesn't really have it in the gameplay, it only has it in the mission briefs and the cinematics, it's not enough. I need the music as well in the gameplay. The ambience music was on point, yes, I will give them that, you know, with the birds chirping, the wind going through the trees, you know, you hear that sound. So yeah, that was nice as well. And also the sounds coming from the battlefields, and when your soldiers celebrate, that's also quite nice. But yet again, I must say that the game kind of loses me when it comes to making your army, you know, having that control over the means of production to create your army, or creating a citadel or a fortress where you can build up your army and have a staging ground for, you know, proceeding forward against your enemies. I think maybe because my mind has been trained over Age of Mythology, and you know, because that's where it all started with me, you know, with RTS types of games as well, you know, with Age of Mythology, and where you had to have your town center, turning it into a citadel, having all of the houses and the barracks and the types of military units you can bring onto the fore, and the forts, you know, and all that type of traditional Age of Mythology, traditional Age of Empire kind of gameplay. I'm stuck with that. So with this game, it's different. You know, you get what you get from the gameplay. If it sends you only 50 soldiers, you gotta use 50 soldiers to win the game level. You know, there's no other option. There's no way of producing more forces. What you have is what you can only use. So yeah, that is a bit of a disadvantage in my point of view. But yeah, the game is different, it's unique, and I can't wait for part 2. Hopefully I can react to it next week. Hopefully, I'm crossing fingers. Hopefully I'll also see you guys there for part 2 for Myth the Fallen Lords 2. I think that's what it's called, right? And yeah, that's it for tonight. Remember guys, if you want to check out the original video as well as MandaloreGaming's YouTube channel, the links are going to be in the description below. If you like my reaction, please give me a like, comment and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos, and I'll see you guys next week. Okay, bye bye.